Me. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for asking me. I'm super excited to be here today.
Yeah. So, for those of us who are here who don't know you, maybe don't know about the project, would you first? I should introduce you, everyone. This is Francesca Leo. She is a beautiful flutist and also has really led the way with Angela McCuston. Am I pronouncing that right?
hmm
On the Flute weight project. So I'll let you give a little intro to kind of what that's about.
Yeah. So I'm the founder of Playing Without Pain, which is an interactive web resource and social media platform committed to connecting musicians to resources to treat performance-related injuries and also learn how to prevent them. So we started this flute weight project it was 11 months ago in March. Now it's more than that. But it feels like March was so long ago, as you all know. So
Yes.
we started the project in the fall of 2019, and it was kind of a product of Angela and I discussing some different things that we could do related to performing arts health, because we were both interested in it and already working together. So we decided to team up on a project. And so at that time, I was still pretty in the thick of all of my research in performing arts health, and I still am continuing to do that research and just learn more about performance-related injuries and everything. And so I was really thinking about the weight of instruments and how that could play a factor in the development of or putting someone at risk for a performance-related injury. So I asked Angela if she would be interested in teaming up with me on this project, and she was totally game for it. So we went into the project with no expectations, just looking to learn more and gather data about how much flutes actually weigh from a variety of different brands. So that's when we reached out to you guys and Flute Specialists. You guys are the co-sponsors of this project, and you guys were so interested in helping us, and I'm so appreciative of that, because we couldn't have done it without you.
Well, I was so happy to get your email that you were doing this work, because we once in a while we have clients ask very specifically about flute weight, or they'll contact us specifically looking for lightweight flutes. And I felt like I had a pretty good grasp on what made a flute heavy, but I was very surprised by some of your research findings. And I wonder if there were any findings that you found particularly surprising.
Yeah, there were actually a couple. So I think the most surprising was just the average weight of a flute. So after we tested 42 flutes from 14 different brands and took the averages of all of the weights, we found that the average of the flute is about 1.13 pounds. So if you think about that, that's pretty significant. I mean, we've all been working out at home right now. I don't know if you've ever used hand weights, like 1 pound hand weights, but for me, it doesn't feel like a lot when I begin to use them. But after you hold them for a while, like, your arms really start to get tired. And so if we're not conditioned to be holding that amount of weight for that long, and we just don't even really think about it, that could definitely pose a problem for the development of performance-related injuries or tension or soreness. So I think that was a really interesting finding. Also, the fact that one of the wooden flutes that we tested was actually the heaviest, even heavier than the gold flutes. So
That is crazy.
Whenever I think of wooden flutes, I think of lightweight. Like, wood seems like it would be much lighter than even silver. And so that was a really interesting finding. And it all has to do with the density of the wood. So granadilla wood is a popular wood used in most instruments. It's actually a very dense wood and actually weighs a little bit more than silver sometimes. So that was fascinating.
That's totally mind-blowing.
I know.
If you think about it, usually if people are trying wood, they do it pretty independently of silver. So when I saw that finding, I was also shocked. Like, how could that possibly be? How could we not know this? But it makes sense, because they're often in isolated incidents. Like, we'll play test wood flutes and then we'll play test silver. It's never like holding one in each hand. So but that's a totally crazy finding. So I had some questions just
Yeah.
about like what brought you to this work. And I know that on your website, it does say that you and Angela both have experienced some performance related injuries.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was kind of wondering, like, if you went through other means of trying to improve and like help your injury, or, and if any of those worked, like what led you to this?
Yeah, so I suffered from a pretty severe performance related injury in my undergrad degree, especially, but I was even experiencing performance related pain before that. At that point, I had never heard anyone talk of musicians getting injured, so I didn't even know it was a possibility. So I always would hear of athletes getting injured, which made sense to me, but I never heard of musicians getting injured. So when I was experiencing pain, I thought that there was something wrong with me or that I was doing something wrong. When it turns out, so that injury led me to pursue a research study at Bowling Green State University on the prevalence of performance-related injuries at my undergrad. And those study results showed that 84% of my fellow colleagues were also experiencing some form of performance-related pain. And similar studies
Wow.
showed similar or even higher statistics of especially collegiate musicians suffering from
Mm-hmm.
performance-related injuries. So that it made me feel better, but it also really made me feel terrible because people were suffering in silence and not talking about it. And so that was what prompted me to create Playing Without Pain. And I'm still doing research in performing arts health and advocating for it, especially in the inclusion of performing arts health education at public school and private school levels, like when students are in high school and middle school, and
Wow.
especially in college as well. So that's kind of what got me into this work. Angela has a similar story, and she has a business called Music Strong Fitness right now, where she actually is a personal trainer, and she works with musicians on strength training and corrective exercises to prevent and treat performance-related
Oh,
injuries too.
cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. We might have to chat with her about like what kind of training we should all be doing. I know
Yeah.
you mentioned we're all working out from home, and I have to say I'm not consistently part of that group, but
It's okay. It's really fine.
uh, so are there other like means of helping with performance related injuries that you explored as like in conjunction with flute weight, or did you
Yeah.
jump right into the weight idea?
Yeah, so flute weight is really just the tip of the iceberg. It is something that maybe can have an impact on the development of a performance-related injury, but the majority of it is what level of body awareness you have and how often you're taking breaks. A lot of us, and I know I was guilty of this too, when I was in undergrad especially, I would practice and play for like 8 hours a day, and I would not take breaks, and it was not good.
No,
And so
it
I
was
think
like,
that's part of the
yeah.
reason why
Yeah, I
my
mean,
injury got so bad. Yeah,
yeah,
and
I think that's a familiar story because it feels like it's so important that we stay in the practice room forever, and you're really praised for that. There's all kinds of feedback loops that, you know, everyone talks about how many hours they played that day, like it's a
yeah,
badge of honor to be in pain, but I'm so glad that
yeah.
you do this work. So, yeah.
Thank you.
So,
Yeah,
that's a really good tip. We actually just got a question. Are there any
sure.
special exercises or guides to reduce anxiety? That's,
Anxiety. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, there's tons. Especially, I don't know if you've ever read the Don Green books, but Performance Success and Audition Success, those are great manuals, and they have exercises in preparing for high pressure performances and reducing your anxiety levels for them. There's tons of books on performance anxiety, including The Inner Game of Tennis, which is actually a book for athletes, but a lot of musicians use it too because the psychology is so similar. And also, was the question also about strength exercises or was it just anxiety? I forgot. Okay.
I would like to
But,
hear strength exercises.
okay. Yeah, so like I said, that's a great question to ask Angela. And there's a pretty strong network on Instagram of musicians and healthcare professionals advocating for strength training for musicians. Like to name a few, Musicians Maintenance is a physical therapist, and he's committed to working with musicians. And same with Opus PT, Opus _PT. And the conditioned musician, like I said, just to name a few, if you follow me, just send me a DM, and I can refer you to people who are constantly posting exercises that are trained in exercise science or physical therapy.
That's awesome. I will also I'll do a post today with some of those people linked so that we have a resource.
Awesome.
Yeah,
and also Alexander, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Alexander technique and body mapping and somatic education practices like that, they're great to teach body awareness, which helps with your flute playing posture and also just your movement in everyday life. And also I've found they have been really helpful in reducing performance anxiety as well. So if you can, take a couple body mapping or Alexander technique lessons.
What should people expect from their, like, if they're just starting body mapping or Alexander technique, what are the first few classes like for that?
Yeah, so the first few classes are really just getting introduced to the work. It is so often so different from how we were brought up in our pedagogy, with the, you know, everyone saying no pain, no gain. Like you were saying, we were praised for not taking breaks, and we realize now that that's not a sustainable way to proceed in the future without having such high numbers of people getting injured. So the first few classes are typically just an introduction to body awareness, because including me, a lot of musicians just never learned about that. And so it's really important to just begin to learn about it. And it's an ongoing process. So you can't expect to be better after the first lesson. So it takes time, but I highly recommend it. I think it's so worth it.
Great. Well, that's good to know. I've never done any formal body mapping training. It's kind of a weird gap in my training. So it's good to hear that you won't feel like totally different after one session as in many things. Okay, so I posted a question to our followers yesterday asking what questions they had for you, and we got a lot of really good questions. I think we can go through some of them now, if that's okay.
Sure, yeah, of course.
Okay, great. So the first question really dives in, super specific. How does heavy wall tubing affect the tone and the weight of flutes?
Awesome. That's a great question. So the tone is going to be mostly personal preference. For me, I think I typically notice a little bit more resistance with the heavy wall flutes and a little bit more possibility of depth and color of the sound. But you could ask another flutist and they might tell you the completely different answer. So it's really up to you. I know people that love heavy wall flutes, and I also know people that don't. So it's really a matter of your personal preference. But the heavy wall tubing, so the tubing is actually thicker in heavy wall flutes than standard wall flutes, and that's what gives it the added resistance. And it also significantly adds to the weight. So there's definitely a difference, but if you prefer it, definitely go for it. And the weight doesn't always affect everybody, but if you find it affecting you, you may want to check in with a healthcare professional or maybe one of the personal trainers that I mentioned to work on strength training so that you're able to manage the weight better.
I think that makes perfect sense based on my experience with heavy wall too. I totally agree. It does change the sound, and definitely the responsiveness, like you said, often feels a little more resistant. I tend to agree with that. But I also think the most important thing to keep in mind for people who are shopping is that you just have to try it, because we really don't know. Like I might guess, I really think this person's going to like this flute. And sometimes I'm right, but a lot of the time it's totally unpredictable what people will like. So awesome. Yeah. And okay, the next question is, I'm just going to read like the exact question.
Sure.
Sometimes my upper arms feel sore. Is that likely to be the weight of the flute or tension?
Yeah, so again, that's a really, like, that's just the tip of the iceberg is the weight of the flute. That's something that definitely, if you're experiencing consistent pain or soreness, I always like to think of pain as a sign that something's not right in your body or in the way that you're holding and carrying your body and also holding your flute. So I would really recommend you checking in with a doctor, scheduling an appointment with a musculoskeletal doctor just for a checkup, maybe starting physical therapy if it works with your schedule and your insurance. And I know guidelines are different right now with COVID, but there are online platforms as well that you could try. So I think weight can definitely play a role, but not always. So it's a case by case basis. And anytime you're experiencing consistent pain, it's just always better to check it out early and just not let it get too bad.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I think, yeah, spot on. If you're having
Yeah.
pain, you should always pay attention to pain. Don't ignore the pain.
Yeah.
It's your body telling you. It's like an alert signal.
Yeah.
So you kind of mentioned this in your last answer, but what is the best way to hold a flute? Like, how do we know that we're doing it right so that we aren't contributing to pain or tiredness?
Yeah. Yeah, that's again, it's going to be very individualized. It feels like all these questions are individualized, but it's really so true because every body is different, and that means that you have to find the posture that works the best with your balance. Sometimes I hesitate using the word posture because we always think it means sitting up really straight, which means forcing your spine into a straight line, which it's not. It has a natural curve in it. And so that's where I think the body mapping and Alexander technique lessons really, really help because as we were talking about earlier, the first few lessons are really just finding your balance and unlearning habits that you may have picked up over time in regards to how you're standing or how you're sitting that may contribute to pain in other areas of your daily life. So
Yeah.
I think the first most important thing is to find your position of balance. And there are some videos that I can send you that help you do that online as well. And then really working on bringing the flute to you instead of bringing your body to the flute. Because when we first learn how to play the flute, you see little kids sometimes like resting it on their shoulder, just trying to navigate how to hold this big long tube of an instrument. And so it's a lot that we will likely have to unlearn if you are consistently experiencing pain. So that's another method of treating that, is just to really find what alignment and what balance works best for you. I also notice, and I've been guilty of this too, a lot of flutists, when we spend so much time in a small practice room, we tend to hold our flutes really close to our body. So I just want to remind you all that it's okay to take up space, and it's okay to have your arms a little bit more further from your body instead of just really trying to be as small as possible when you practice, because that's going to contribute to tension as well.
Yeah. Oh, I love that idea of taking up space. I think it also sounds like a good way to just expand our playing and our like performance because you're right. We do spend a lot of time practicing in small rooms, especially in school. And hopefully maybe that's a silver lining of COVID, is like we're practicing at home and maybe we're in like normal sized rooms.
Hopefully. So, definitely.
I've got one more question here, and then if anybody has more questions, you can drop them in the little comment box. But we've got, which additional options add the most weight to a flute? So if you were going to custom order the heaviest flute possible, what would that be? And the lightest flute, what would that look like?
Yeah, so the features that add the most weight is definitely the C-sharp trill. And also sometimes the split E mechanism, which you can probably explain this better than I can, but some flutes offer an option for you to do an E facilitator or a donut mechanism instead of a split E. So I don't know if that's all brands or if it's just some brands. Like I said, you can probably answer that better than I can. But also, go ahead.
No. So the donut should not add as much because it's just a little disc that goes in the key. And that's something that some brands offer automatically, but can always be installed separately on any flute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So yeah, that's a great option to reduce a little bit. And then also the addition of the B foot joint. We all need a B foot joint. So it's kind of hard to go without that. But I have seen some flutes that you can like purchase a C foot joint in addition to a B foot joint. So like if you didn't need the B foot, you could practice with the C foot for a few days and then switch back and forth. So again, I don't know if all brands offer that, but I have seen it in a couple flutes. The lightest flute we found in our entire study was a 1975 Powell, and it had no specs. It had a C foot, no split E, no C sharp trill. So that was the lightest flute. So the keys, the addition of keys definitely adds a lot of weight, but I have a C sharp trill key and I couldn't imagine my flute without it. So sometimes it's a matter of just learning how to manage the extra weight.
Yeah. I think it's interesting you talking about the foot joints, especially because we've seen, so C foot joints are options with pretty much any maker, pretty much any model. However, they're not usually in stock anywhere. Like we don't keep them in stock because they're just, so many people prefer B. But once in a while, we do get custom orders in for either for an additional foot joint to be built. So somebody buys the flute with the B, but then they say, okay, but I also want a C foot joint. You can get a foot joint custom built. It's usually at least a couple thousand. So it's not a tiny investment. It's a really good option, especially for like handmade flutes. Can get a little kind of crazy if you're looking at step up models. It's like, how much am I going to invest in a foot joint for my flute that's only worth $2,000? But it is an option to custom order with most brands. And we do actually have, in the last few months, we've had at least one order like that every month, which is, feels like an uptick. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if people are maybe just playing a lot more because we're all home and there's nothing else to do. Yeah, but that's definitely an option. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Awesome.
And yeah,
that's
good.
Cool.
Well, is there anything else about the project or about your work with playing without pain that you kind of want to share about or impress upon? So here we have Corinne from Haynes is dropping in to say that the request for C, there are more and more C foot joint requests. Oh, and Hayes here. Okay. So nice. Anyway, okay. Anything else you want to share?
Yeah, sure, definitely. And hi to Corinne from Haynes. Nice to see you. So Haynes actually offers lightweight mechanisms too, which is a great option to reduce weight in flutes. I play on a Haynes and I love my Haynes. So just want to give a shout out. And in terms of the project, we're adding more and more flutes to our database each day as we're getting more data in, and so it's expanding. It's mostly just aimed to be a resource for people. Like I said, the most important finding was just knowing how much weight an average flute was. So just even knowing that it's like, okay, it's a little over a pound for most flutes, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're practicing for 8 hours a day, it really starts to, take a toll on your body if you're not also taking care of yourself and taking breaks. So I think that was like the most important takeaway for me of it. And also just wanted to remind you guys just to really take care of your physical and mental health, especially during this time. It can feel easy to just push ahead as usual and just not take breaks, especially when you're at home and you don't have many places to go because you can't travel and stuff right now. So it's easy to just lose track of time. If you can, set timers when you practice, like every 12 minutes. That's usually what I do. I set a timer for 12 minutes and then I take a break and maybe even lay down in constructive rest, which are you familiar with constructive rest?
No. I'll be totally honest. Nope.
No, that's okay, because I definitely wanted to explain it if not. So it's a practice from the Alexander technique, and body mappers also use it, and a lot of more and more musicians are beginning to use it now. So basically you lay down on the ground and you take a thin book and you place it underneath your head so that your head is just slightly raised, and you put your feet flat on the ground so that your knees are pointing up towards the ceiling, and you just like rest your hands on your stomach or lower torso, and it's basically like a body reset. So Amy Leikar, my body mapping teacher, recommends taking a break while recording or while listening to the recording of the practice you just did, which is still being productive mentally and kind of organizing your thoughts for the next part of your practice session, but it's also giving your body the physical break that it needs. So that's really a great thing to do. I've been loving that lately, and I actually feel like I get more accomplished than just playing the same run over and over again, you know?
Yeah. So how long should each break be?
So it could usually between 5 to 10 minutes. I think 5 minutes if you're taking a break every 12 minutes is good. Maybe a little bit longer if you're practicing for 30 minutes at a time. Maybe take a 10-minute break in between. And it's so hard to take breaks, especially when you're in the mindset of just like, you're in a productive mindset and you're like, oh, I'm getting work done. And then the timer goes off and you're like, oh man. But it's really so important, especially for injury prevention.
Yeah. You know, I also feel like when I used to spend just hours and hours in the practice room, I would give myself like mental breaks. Like it's hard to be super productive beyond 15 or 20 minutes because your brain just needs a break. So it makes sense that we can give our brain a little bit of a break, and also kind of almost just as importantly, our body needs to actually rest.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great. Well, will you share your website and your information? Do you want to mention it now? And I'll also include links in our next slide.
Awesome. Yeah. So my website is playingwithoutpain.com. It's just my Instagram handle with .com at the end. I have a whole page with a summary of the Flute weight project, some misconceptions of what adds weight and what doesn't. Like we were discussing earlier, the average weight of silver, gold, fusion, wooden flutes that we found, and some more additional fun facts on there too. So I can send you the link for that. It's also in my bio right now. And thank you so much for sponsoring this project. And if you want to find me, I'm at Playing Without Pain on Instagram, and I post a lot of resources for musicians relating to how to maintain good mental and physical health, especially during these trying times, and also while you're in school. That's kind of what I've been specializing in. So thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing so much information. I know I learned a lot, and I can't wait to learn more. And everyone should definitely go follow Francesca Playing Without Pain. She shares so many amazing resources, and really this is a topic that we all should be keeping in mind more now than ever. So time with
thank you. And I just saw Angela waved. Hi, Angela. She's she's who I did this project with, Music Strong Fitness. So thank you.
Great, definitely.
Great to see you. And thank you so much for having me.
Thanks again. We'll talk to you later.
Sounds good. Bye. Thank you.